Okay. So just a word of warning before we get started. I can't see the chat window, so I'll just address kind of the questions at the end. So just understand that I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to get through all of this stuff, and then I can answer your questions there at the end. So if you do have a question, go ahead and put it in there. But, try to be specific. Don't just say, "What did you say?" Because then I have no idea what I was saying at that particular time. And regardless, I'm recording this because reasons. Anyway, last time we left off, we were talking about dissociative disorders. Now we're going to move on to kind of, I don't want to say the granddaddy of all dissociative disorders, but a kind of another type of disorder that can lead to dissociation, and that is schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, when originally created, was kind of seen as a catch-all for people that were seen to have mental health issues. Schizophrenia was kind of the thing that everything got called. If you had bipolar, you were schizophrenic. If you had anything else, you were labeled as schizophrenic. Since then, we have kind of narrowed down the definition of what schizophrenia is so that we can better understand exactly what these different things are. Okay. So schizophrenia encompasses a variety of disorders and has no single cause. Schizophrenics often experience distortions of their thinking, cognition, and perception. They can also suffer emotional disturbances and even lose motor control. So they stop being able to move their bodies normally. If a person remains afflicted with schizophrenia for a long time, it can actually cause brain damage. Schizophrenia afflicts, in the general population, about 1 in 100. So it's a very low probability that you will ever encounter schizophrenia. However, if it runs in your family, you have a 1 in 10 chance of developing it. So it does have a genetic element to it, but it's not a perfect 1-to-1. So you might get it, you might not. Your chances of it go up. Most schizophrenics have confused, disordered thoughts that end up affecting their speech. Some theorists believe that schizophrenia results from an abnormal brain structure, theorizing that a schizophrenic's neural connections are in disarray and can't line up in normal ways. Schizophrenics also have problems with comprehension. When they think and try to communicate, a kind of punning effect takes place. For example, if you told somebody that you're having chest pains, they would probably immediately go, "Oh, you might be having a heart attack." But a schizophrenic would take the word chest and start thinking about any kind of other associations. For example, like a sunken treasure chest. You might suddenly be going, "Oh, I'm thinking of a sunken treasure chest." So they might respond to your having chest pains as talking about things about pirates or swashbucklers or things like that. So it's a reordering of the thought process that can make it really difficult to communicate with people with schizophrenia, and make it difficult for people with schizophrenia to communicate with you. It is very, very difficult, and it is quite terrifying because if you think about it, your brain, your thoughts have always been the thing that has made everything make sense around you. And with schizophrenia, you can no longer trust what your brain and what your mind is thinking. And it can be quite frightening. Many schizophrenics live in a far-off reality, in a dreamy, imaginary world filled with delusions, disembodied voices, and vivid hallucinations. Schizophrenia has no single cause, nor does a cure exist. Although psychotropic drugs do seem to help schizophrenics block out the voices and some of their hallucinations. So they're basically very, very powerful mind-altering medications that can stop hallucinations from taking place. It basically, I don't know how they work, honestly. They're very, very complicated. Usually, as long as a patient stays on their meds, their conditions will improve. On a whole, however, schizophrenia divides itself along the rule of thirds, meaning 1/3 will get better, 1/3 will stay the same, and 1/3 will get worse. So we really don't have a good answer to schizophrenia. Schizophrenia seems to arise most often in late adolescence or early adulthood. So you guys have something to look forward to. Yeah, you're entering prime schizophrenia. Good job. Most psychologists believe that schizophrenia is a collection of symptoms rather than some kind of single disease. What you have here is a painting that was done by an adolescent boy who was diagnosed as schizophrenic. These are paintings of his family members. His occupational therapist encouraged him to draw, and it seemed to provide him with some relief. So, schizophrenia basically alters your perceptions, your thought processes, and basically everything else. And we don't know why or even how it happens, but we know that it happens. Okay. So, a few years ago, and by a few years ago, I mean probably close to 10 years ago, I actually had a student who, when we started talking about schizophrenia, immediately raised his hand and went, "My brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia." And I said, "Please feel free to share more, but you don't have to because, privacy and all that kind of stuff." And he's like, no, it's fine. I'm not going to, say anything that bad, but this is his experience with it. And basically, he said his older brother, was fairly normal. Everything was fine. And then one day it just, something clicked, something switched. And then suddenly he was a different person and he was acting very strangely. And when that happened, he found that his brother just couldn't be around his family because of, I don't want to say trust issues, but he just couldn't be around them because he was afraid that something was going to happen. And so his brother would leave for months and just disappear. And then a couple of months later, he would suddenly come back and everything was okay again. And his brother would kind of go back to normal. But over the course of the month, he had no recollection of what happened. His parents didn't know what happened. Nobody knew where he went, but he came back wearing the same clothes that he left in and looking like he hadn't, showered or really taken care of himself for 2 months. So it was very, very frightening for their family to go through. The one place that you will probably have a run-in with a person who is schizophrenic is going to be in the homeless encampments in downtown Los Angeles, Skid Row and Santa Monica Pier and stuff like that, where there's large numbers of homeless that kind of congregate. You're going to find that there's a lot of them who are suffering from either diagnosed or undiagnosed mental illness. And a lot of time it's schizophrenia. Their families simply can't handle them. They can't take care of themselves and they end up on the street for better or for worse. And it's mostly worse. It's not usually any better. So it can be very, very frightening, which I really don't recommend you going down to Skid Row and like, "Hey, are you schizophrenic?" Because they're not a sideshow. They are human beings with a mental disorder. Treat them with respect. And B, they can be dangerous because their thought patterns have altered. And yeah, just tread lightly. Be careful. Okay. The next couple of slides are going to be some self-portraits that were made by a schizophrenic woman named Joanne. She was a talented adolescent with a flair for art, but Joanne was also extremely delusional, often claiming that she was Shakespeare's Richard II. She told her occupational therapist that her self-portraits depicted her true colors, ones that she said lay beneath her skin. She always said that she was on the verge of being out of control, or at least she felt that way. So here in the first painting that you can see that she did before she was hospitalized for her schizophrenia, you can see that she is wide-eyed, full of fear, and purple, which she believes is her actual color beneath her skin. So if you take her skin away, she is purple and her hair is orange. Okay. And she is Richard II. So she is struggling with her mental illness before her hospitalization. Here you can see a painting that she did shortly after she entered the hospital and began art therapy. At this point, she feels deeply dejected, and the painting shows her inner turmoil. You can also see that she had lost quite a bit of weight, but you can also see she is still purple. Here, you can see that she is more normal in her proportions. You can still see the fear and sadness in her expression, and she's still purple. And in the final, oh my God, what? Go away, stupid Bixby. In her final self-portrait, you can see that she is in normal proportions and regular skin tones and seems to be more relaxed. Okay, so this is either after she was released or shortly before she was released from the institution. Symptoms. What does it look like to be a schizophrenic? Well, schizophrenics often suffer from delusions about their physical environment and their relationships with other people. In many cases, paranoia accompanies the delusions, and schizophrenics become convinced that some sort of shadowy conspiracy has targeted them. People with schizophrenia also sometimes have auditory hallucinations in which they hear voices when no one else is in the room with them. Some schizophrenics become incoherent or display a marked decline in thought. Their speech pattern appears to change and consist of gibberish and unrelated words thrown together. Schizophrenics also have been known to show inappropriate affect or emotion. Their emotions can seem sluggish or delayed. Their body language and movements begin to change, and they often suffer from a diverted attention or a kind of cognitive flooding happens that erodes their ability to focus on anything. The series of paintings that we have here is a set of paintings that was done by an artist who was schizophrenic. He painted his cat, and he did it at different stages of one of his schizophrenic episodes. The top left corner is kind of at the beginning when he's just getting into the delusions and the hallucinations. The second one is where those hallucinations are getting a little bit more vivid. And then the bottom two, you can see, are extremely vivid in hallucination and are quite terrifying if I don't happen to say so myself. That one on the bottom right-hand corner, if that were my cat, I would be scared to death of it, and I would want to not have that around anymore. Anyway, schizophrenics have these kinds of hallucinations, and they can lead them to, kind of go down a path that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. There are three main types of schizophrenia, or at least there were in the DSM-4. I haven't been able to update this for DSM-5 quite yet. Paranoid schizophrenia is definitely still one of them. Catatonic might have been eliminated or changed, and disorganized may have been eliminated or changed. Not exactly sure. Like I said, I haven't read the DSM-5 all the way through, and I'm probably not going to. But I'll look it up. It'll eventually get changed. But we're still going to talk about these three. So let's start with paranoid schizophrenia. In paranoid schizophrenia, which is probably the most common form of schizophrenia, sufferers have complex delusions where people are hallucinating that there are people out to get them. They are being persecuted. Okay, there is no persecution of that particular person, but they believe themselves to be persecuted. There is some sort of shadowy cabal of people out to get them. Okay. And the delusions and the hallucinations actually remain stable over a period of time. So it's not that the delusion kind of changes from day to day. It's the same delusion, which is what lends credence to the idea that it is real. There is really somebody out to get me. Hallucinations of smell, taste, or other bodily sensations can happen. Paranoid schizophrenics rarely have visual hallucinations, but they can hallucinate all kinds of other sensory feelings. They get these unseen voices or voices that are coming out of nowhere, giving them commands. And they often believe that they have some sort of special mission that they have to complete because the conspiracy or the persecution is closing in on them. One of the best examples of paranoid schizophrenia in the media was actually done in the, I think it came out in 2000. God, it's a 20-year-old movie? Good God. Anyway, but it's a movie starring Russell Crowe named A Beautiful Mind. Beautiful Mind is actually based on a true story of I believe it was a mathematician who suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. It's a fairly good movie, and the depiction of his paranoid schizophrenia is, I would say, pretty good for a fictional movie. But here's the thing: you don't figure out or you don't learn that he has paranoid schizophrenia until about halfway through the movie, and then you have to start kind of wondering, so what was real and what wasn't? And it's kind of an interesting movie. I recommend it, but watch it at your leisure because I'm not going to be assigning it. The next type of schizophrenia is catatonic schizophrenia. Schizophrenics of this type move back and forth between a waking state in which they are very, very active, even agitated, and a catatonic state in which they remain mute, motionless, and largely unresponsive, often for long periods of time. Catatonic schizophrenics exhibit a kind of waxy flexibility and can hold their limbs in unusual positions for substantial amounts of time without any discomfort. Okay. If you remember back to the beginning of the year when we watched Awakenings, the people in Awakenings were all diagnosed as atypical catatonic schizophrenia because they didn't have a name for what they had. And that's what it was closest to. So that's what they diagnosed them with. Oftentimes, people with catatonic schizophrenia have been described as resembling a wax statue that's melting because they just can stand there and hold a position for a long time. Now, again, in the latest DSM, catatonic may have been eliminated or altered in some way. I remember them saying something about it, but I don't remember what they said. So I apologize in advance, but still, catatonic schizophrenia. Now you know, and knowing's half the battle. Go, Joe. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. Another form of schizophrenia, at least at the time where this presentation was created, was disorganized schizophrenia. Disorganized schizophrenics exhibit disturbed and incoherent language patterns, inappropriate displays of emotion, disruptions of their motor activity, and hallucinations and delusions. So it's kind of like both catatonic and paranoid schizophrenia kind of combined together. But it's not enough of one or the other to be diagnosed as one or the other. So it just gets the title of disorganized schizophrenia. So it's kind of like all the hits of schizophrenia wrapped up into one. Disorganized schizophrenia. Available now on Spotify. Anyway, that's actually not a bad name for a band. Hi, we're Disorganized Schizophrenia. Now we're going to play our number one song. What was that? No. At least somebody got it. I mean, come on. There's got to be a band out there named Disorganized Schizophrenia. I mean, there has to be. It's too cool of a name not to be called. Anyway, the thing about schizophrenia is you have to kind of think about it in the same terms as cancer. Symptoms could disappear. You could be treated for it and the symptoms will simply fade away or not be severe enough to earn the diagnosis of schizophrenia. However, we call it remission because it most likely is going to come back. You're going to go through another schizophrenic episode in the future. Most people don't just have one, they have multiple. So it's something to kind of think about and to remember. It's not a bad thing, but it's something that we have to kind of keep in mind, is that it is remission. It is not a cure. It just kind of has faded away. It's again like a wave coming in and falling back down. That's kind of what happens in a schizophrenic episode. Is it kind of builds, it crests, and then it fades away. And it could take, anywhere between a week and a couple of months for it to kind of fade back into the distance, and everything kind of goes back to normal again, and you can kind of live your life, and then it comes back again. So it can be very difficult to live with. A lot of people don't know how to deal with it, which is, again, why a lot of those people end up on the street. One last thing, and I'm pretty sure this got eliminated with the latest DSM, but we also have something called undifferentiated schizophrenia. This occurs when a person has symptoms that meet the general diagnostic criteria, but don't conform to any of the three types. This could include a deterioration in your daily functions, hallucinations and delusions, inappropriate emotions, disordered thoughts. So honestly, I don't know really what the difference is between undifferentiated and disorganized. I don't know what the difference is between them. And I think that's why one or both of them got eliminated, because psychologists also said, what the hell? Why do we got two? Just have one. We only need one. They do that after researching. Anywho. Causes of schizophrenia. There are a lot of different thoughts as to where schizophrenia comes from. Some believe that there is a genetic element to it, because again, in the general population, it's about a 1% chance of developing schizophrenia. But in a in a family, it can go to a 10% chance. So there is possibly a genetic element to that. There is also people who believe that it is a biochemistry problem. Your neurotransmitters are off somehow, or a disruption in your brain's essential structure, whether it be, neurons that aren't quite where they should be or something. Some psychologists believe that there might even be an environmental factor with schizophrenia. For example, you might, your family might have a particular sensitivity to a chemical or a situation or something, and then that sets off your schizophrenic episode. So we don't know where it comes from. We don't know why it happens, and we don't have a cure. And we don't have a cure because we don't know why it happens, and we don't know where it comes from. So, yeah. All right. The next group of disorders that we're going to talk about are mood-based disorders. These are by far and away the largest grouping of disorders that are out there. Anxiety orders, I think, would be definitely number 2, but mood disorders are definitely number 1, because this is where depression is. And there are a lot of people out there who are diagnosed as clinically depressed. Clinical depression is a serious mood disorder. It's not just, oh, you're sad. Oh, I'm so depressed. No. This is, you believe that there is no hope in the future. Okay. It also, mood disorders also are where manic episodes are. So if you can think of what depression is, the exact opposite of that is mania. And then when you combine both depression and mania together, you get bipolar disorder. And we'll talk about some of those in just a second. So first thing, one disorder that we can actually, help people with pretty quickly and easily is seasonal affective disorder. We talked a little bit about SAD when we talked about the sleep cycle and the circadian rhythm. It is a type of depression. And it's because of the fact that there is less light, because you live in the far northern reaches of the world, and the sun, is only up for an hour a day before setting again. And so because there is less light, your pineal gland is secreting more melatonin, and that is making you depressed. Okay. Treatments for it are pretty simple. Basically, all you have to do is either sleep deprive yourself, so just kind of stay up all night one night, or have an artificial light, a very, very bright artificial light that kind of simulates the sun for you. And that will also tend to shut off the melatonin production, and you'll start feeling a little bit better. But it's all about your internal clock, et cetera, et cetera. But it's classified a mood disorder. Now, we need to talk about something that's very, very important, and something that is 100% preventable, and that is suicide. Mood disorders can lead people to suicidal thoughts and ideation. Every year, more than 32,000 Americans end their own lives. One suicide occurs every 16 minutes. Likely candidates for suicide include people with terminal illness, people who feel lonely or disconnected, and people suffering from intense emotional pain. Now, in the last year, we've had a lot of all three of those things. People suffering from COVID, people disconnected because of COVID, people suffering intense emotional pain because of COVID. And what have we seen? We've seen suicide rates go up. Suicide is a very, very important thing, and it's something to take very, very seriously. Women attempt suicide more often than men do, but men are more likely to succeed. The reasoning behind that is the methods through which men and women attempt suicide. Women tend to go with more passive methods, things like overdosing on sleeping pills and things like that, whereas men will go for more active methods like shooting themselves in the head. Suicide also occurs more commonly among the elderly and college students. It's actually the second leading cause of death for college students. Some people commit suicide in order to permanently banish feelings that they find unacceptable, especially sexual feelings, or to punish loved ones who they feel should have perceived and attended to their needs more. 70% of those who threaten suicide kill themselves within 3 months of making the threat. This is a very, very important issue, and it's something that I take very, very seriously. A few years ago, I had a student. They did not commit suicide, just kind of spoiler alert, so you're not like, oh my God, this kid's going to die. No, they did not. But she came to class one day, and she stopped at my desk, and she's like, I saved a person's life this last weekend. And there was no context. It wasn't like I asked her, hey, did you save a person's life this weekend? But she came up to me and she's like, I saved a person's life this weekend. And I said, okay, how did you do that? What did you, like stop somebody from crossing the street in front of a bus or something? And she's like, no, I volunteer on a suicide hotline, and I managed to talk somebody out of killing themselves. And I said, that's really cool. She's like, yeah, it felt amazing. And I'm like, that's really, 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 really cool. Keep doing that. And she's like, yeah, I definitely want to. One of the hardest documentaries I've ever seen in my entire life, I believe, is called The Bridge. And it's a documentary from, I want to say like 2005, 2006. It's from a while ago. But basically what the filmmakers did was they put cameras on buildings next to the Golden Gate Bridge, and they basically just filmed the bridge for an entire year. And the Golden Gate Bridge is actually one of the most, I don't want to say most popular, but is one of the sites that more people throw themselves off of to kill themselves than almost anywhere else in the world. And they captured, I think it was like 70 people leaping to their death from the side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And it was very, very difficult to watch because they not only interviewed two survivors, people who fell all the way to the ocean and lived, but they also interviewed the family of those people who had died. And to hear the stories it was really, really difficult. And suicide is not something to joke about, and it's something to take extremely seriously. Okay. And again, it's 100% preventable. So if somebody you know, or even if you don't know them, says something like they're going to kill themselves, please try to help that person. And if you experience those thoughts, understand there are hundreds of people who want to help you. So please, tomorrow needs you. So don't do that. The idea that only people who are always depressed and having bad days commit suicide is flat out untrue. One example of a person who committed suicide when they basically had everything that a lot of you wish and dream for was Kurt Cobain. In the 1990s, especially the early 1990s, Nirvana was music. It was just what everybody was listening to. Everything they came out with just immediately was a hit, and they were hugely popular. But their lead singer, Kurt Cobain, ended up killing himself in his, I think he was actually renting the house in Seattle, because he's from Washington. He's not from Seattle. He's from this little pissant town on the Washington coast called Aberdeen, which is probably one of the most depressing places in the United States. And he came from there, which, kind of tracks, because if you've ever heard Nirvana, it's dark, not gonna lie. But he killed himself. And there were a lot of people, and I remember this because I was in 7th grade at the time. And I remember when it happened, there were a lot of people who were very worried that there was going to be a lot of copycats who were going to, oh, Kurt killed himself, I need to kill myself. But there weren't a lot of copycats. And a lot of the credit, I think, goes to his wife, who is the musician Courtney Love. There are people out there who think that she killed him, but I wasn't there, so I can't say. Anyway, Courtney Love read his suicide note at a memorial service they were having for Kurt at the Seattle Center, which is kind of this big park in the middle of Seattle. And she read the note, and it was a fairly self-indulgent note. I mean, one of the lines in it is, "I'm too much of an erratic, moody baby. I don't have the passion anymore. And so remember, it's better to burn out than to fade away." And here's what I've learned over 40 years. I'm not fading away. I'm getting stronger every single day. And if I had ended it like Kurt had done, I wouldn't have been able to do all of the stuff that I've been able to do. And that was one of the things that Courtney talked about when she was basically giving kind of a running commentary on his suicide note of, no, you were being selfish. No, what about your kid? I mean, they had just had a baby, and he just put a shotgun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Which, if you're into conspiracies, yes, it would be very difficult to do. But fact of the matter is, suicide's not a joke. Okay? If someone you know starts talking about that in any way, shape, or form, please help them. All right. Not to end on a downer, but let's talk about depression. A major depressive disorder or major depression is where you are so down, your emotional state is so depressed that it starts to interfere with your normal ability to function on a daily basis. Um, it messes with your concentration, your social functioning, your ability to complete simple tasks. Symptoms can include a loss of appetite, sleeplessness, noticeable weight changes, either up or down. And people who suffer from major depression tend to feel a deep hopelessness and view themselves as inadequate or worthless, and often have suicidal thoughts and impulses. Um, we all have, bad days, and we all have things that, we should be upset about and depressed about. If a loved one dies, or we didn't get that big promotion or whatever, we have every right to be depressed about that. But a major depression, there's literally nothing that can get you out of it, because nothing brings you joy anymore, to the point where you begin to feel the hopelessness of ever feeling good ever again. That is a major depressive episode, and is very, 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 very debilitating for people who suffer from it. Bipolar is kind of taking that major depression and coupling it with a manic episode. Remember, a manic episode or a mania is kind of the opposite of depression. Instead of being kind of sad and down and unable to do anything, you're pepped up and you're so full of energy. You can't sit down. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. And you feel great and everything is wonderful. Bipolar is the combination of those two things together. Sufferers alternate between a major depression and mania. Remember, the mania is an elated phase, and depression is the same as a major depression. Oftentimes, people mistake their manic phase as a spurt of creativity and a spurt of energy that is I'm going to do all of these things. And they starting tasks. And the thing with mania is that it's not actually increasing your ability to pay attention or your ability to finish things or anything else like that. It's just, you suddenly have lots of energy, and so you're kind of bouncing off the walls. Now, a lot of psychologists actually believe that the manic phase and the depressive phase kind of work in concert with one another. For example, the manic phase starts a lot of projects, and then you start to realize, I've started too many projects and I'm never going to finish them all. And then you enter into the depressive phase where oh my God, I'm never going to finish these things. And you just kind of collapse into a depression. But then eventually the manic phase comes back and you feel better and everything kind of goes back and forth. Some people believe that bipolar is cyclical and can actually happen at regular intervals. But I haven't seen really strong evidence of that in any kind of study or trials or anything like that. All right. The last bits of disorders that we're going to talk about are personality disorders. Now, in our last unit, we talked about personality. Basically, it's kind of who you are. Well, a personality disorder is when that malfunctions, or you become too much of you, and it makes it difficult for people to be around you and deal with you. There are, I believe, 9 different personality disorders. The first one that we're going to talk about is paranoid personality disorder. Now, remember, paranoid schizophrenic thinks the world's out to get them. A person suffering from paranoid personality disorder also believes that people are out to get them, but there aren't that strong delusion that they have under schizophrenia. They just believe that people are out to get them. Okay. Paranoid personality disorder people are inappropriately suspicious of others. They tend to be hypersensitive to the possibility of any threat or trick. They refuse to accept blame or criticism, even where it's deserved. They are guarded and secretive, devious, scheming, okay, argumentative, but they often see themselves as rational and objective. Okay, so paranoid is they just believe that people are not trustworthy, okay, under any and all circumstances. They search for hidden meaning in everything and read hostile intentions and actions into everything as well. They're quick to challenge the loyalty of their friends and loved ones and often appear to be cold and distant to other people. They try to shift the blame to others and tend to carry long grudges because these people tried to stop me and I'm going to stop them. One example of a person with paranoid personality disorder was a construction worker who got into disputes with his coworkers because he believed that his coworkers were deliberately loosening the bolts on his scaffolding so that they would slip and fall and hurt or kill himself. When he was examined by a psychologist, he actually believed that the psychologist was taking their side against him. Okay. That's how deep this paranoia goes. You're out to get me too, person I've never met before and doesn't know anything about me. Why would I care? I don't care. I just want to get to the bottom of this. Your coworkers seem perfectly nice. See, you're on their side. Yeah, against me. It makes it difficult to be around those people. Speaking of people difficult to being around, antisocial personality disorder are people who exhibit lying, cheating, stealing. They show little to no responsibility for any of their actions. They don't believe that they should be held to any kind of consequence because of their actions. Oftentimes, they're seen as intelligent and charming, but then that kind of wears off because they start to abuse the friendship that you may develop with them. There is a belief that there is a large number of a large percentage of the prison population are people who suffer from antisocial personality disorder. They often show no guilt or remorse for anything that they do, or any kind of trace of anxiety or guilt about their behaviors, and are often likely to blame their own victims. A good example of that is serial killer Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a sociopath for sure, and probably suffered from antisocial personality disorder. He felt no remorse for all of the women that he killed. He killed, I believe, like 40 some women across the United States. No remorse for them whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, when they asked him, do you feel bad about what you did? And he's like, no, those women were stupid for going with me. They deserved it. What? You can't blame the victim on this. You shouldn't have killed them. Yeah, but they shouldn't have gone with me. They should have known that I was bad news. I mean, duh. Everybody knows that. Yeah. It's Oh my God. I hate Bixby so much. I don't even know what I'm saying. That wakes it up and goes, oh, I want to give you some information. I hear you want to know more about Ted Bundy. I know all I need to know about Ted Bundy. He went to the University of Washington. Keep it classy. All right. Antisocial personality disorder, people who suffer from it are also typically pretty careless with money. They don't really think about the consequences of the actions that they take. They tend to be pretty aggressive and really don't care about the needs of others. They only care about themselves and what they get. So, yeah, they're really, really difficult to be around, much like the paranoid people, except the paranoid people at least aren't going to try to take advantage of you like the antisocial people will. Borderline personality disorder is characterized by an instability in mood, self-image, and interpersonal relationships. People with this disorder tend to act impulsively and often in self-destructive ways. They feel uncomfortable being alone, and they often manipulate self-destructive impulses in an effort to control or solidify their personal relationships with other people. Such self-destructive behaviors include things like promiscuity, drug and alcohol abuse, and threats of suicide. These people, people with borderline personality disorder, they need for you to gain your attention, and they need to keep it forever. Um, it is um it's just they're unstable, and they use their instability to manipulate you into staying around. So let's say, for example, you are dating somebody who has borderline personality disorder, and you decide, I'm done with this nonsense, I'm out of here. They might say, well, I'll kill myself if you leave. Now I can't leave because I don't want you to kill yourself. Don't kill yourself, please. And that gets you to stay, and that gets that borderline personality to continue. Borderline personality sufferers often self-injure. It is a common and serious disorder. Um, Suicidal threats and actions are not uncommon, but oftentimes people with borderline, they don't actually want to kill themselves. They just want your attention. Do I have your attention? I want your attention, and I'm going to keep it forever, and you're never going to leave. Or did that just get creepy? Some people believe that borderline is too closely related to depressive, major depression, and bipolar disorders. And so there are people who are like, maybe we should get rid of it. But in the last DSM, they did not get rid of it. So we kept that going. Next up is histrionic. Speaking of needing everybody's attention, histrionic personality disorder sufferers seek constant attention from those around. They are characterized by a pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking, including an excessive need for approval and inappropriate seductiveness, usually beginning in early adulthood. These individuals are lively, dramatic, enthusiastic, and flirtatious. They may be inappropriately sexually provocative, express strong emotions with an impressionistic style, and be easily influenced by people around them. These people need your approval, and they need it now, and they need it forever. Tell me I'm doing the right thing. Okay. Associated features include self-centeredness, self-indulgence, continuous longing for appreciation, and persistent manipulative behavior to achieve their own needs of your attention. Again, they will do literally anything to get your eyes back on them. Okay. Um, People who suffer from histrionic usually function at a high level and can be successful both socially and professionally. Um, they tend to have good social skills, and they tend to use those skills to manipulate people and become the center of attention. Histrionic personality may affect a person's social or romantic relationships or the ability to cope with loss or failures. People with the order lack genuine empathy. They start relationships well, but then tend to falter when depth and durability are needed, alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. They could seek treatment for depression when a romantic relationship ends, but this is by no means exclusive to this disorder. I mean, most people, at the end of a relationship are a little bit sad, unless, it's a good thing that you're no longer with them. They fail to see their own personal situation realistically. They instead tend to dramatize and exaggerate their difficulties. They might go through frequent job changes because they bore easily and have trouble dealing with frustration. Because they tend to crave novelty and excitement, they may place themselves into risky situations. And all of these things kind of lead to greater risks of developing depression. Speaking of Courtney, there is Courtney Love. She, I believe, probably could have been diagnosed as histrionic. I don't think she's quite so histrionic anymore, but I could be incorrect. I don't know. Anyway, it's basically you're throwing yourself at people, hoping that they will love you back, even though there's no emotion there whatsoever. Because I don't know who you are. Why are you talking to me? Kind of a thing. Another group of people difficult to be around: narcissists. People with narcissistic personality disorder display a grandiose sense of self. They are beyond self-centered. They believe that they have the ability to be unlimitedly successful. They believe themselves to be extraordinary. They need constant attention and admiration. They display a sense of entitlement beyond anything that you could probably think of and tend to exploit others. They're given to envy and arrogance and lack the ability to really care about anybody else. Now, this sounds incredibly familiar. But let me give you a different example from the one that I'm sure many of you are probably thinking right now. But yeah, first of all, when they got together, Kim and Kanye, they were both heavy narcissists. I would probably hesitate to classify Kim Kardashian as a narcissist, or at least, well, she's still pretty narcissistic, but she probably doesn't have narcissistic personality disorder any longer. But Kanye, oh my God, he believes himself to be God's gift to music. And I'm not saying he's not talented. He is pretty talented, but he is not a gift from God. Okay. If you ever listen to him talk about himself, you quickly start going, yeah, that guy's got narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. A lack of ability to really care for anybody else, envy, arrogance, a need for attention and admiration, a sense of entitlement, a tendency to exploit others. Okay. It's pretty crazy. Okay. Narcissists also tend to be really, really picky about who their friends are because they believe themselves to be so incredibly special that they can't give their friendship to just anybody. They have to give it to a very specific and well-deserving group of people. Okay. They're usually uninterested in the feelings of others and might take advantage of them. An example of this, a male graduate student sought help because he was having difficulty completing his PhD dissertation. He bragged that his dissertation would revolutionize the field and make him famous, but he had not been able to write much of it. He blamed his academic advisor for his lack of progress. Obviously, it was him holding me back. It's not me being an idiot. Called his fellow students drones because their dissertations are pretty pedestrian, and stated that everybody was jealous of his brilliance. Yeah, no. He had frequent brief relationships with women, but few lasting friendships. Probably because after a couple of minutes with that guy, you very quickly learned, I've got to get away from this person. Another group of narcissists was the cast of Beverly Hills 90210. And I'm not talking about the remake. I'm talking about the original one. They were all pretty narcissistic. But you don't get this reference. I really need to find a new reference. Maybe I could put another very familiar narcissist on there. Anyway. They're really, really just self-centered. They live sheltered lives and then believe everybody has the same life as them. They don't have kind of any empathy for anybody else. They take advantage wherever possible. They share a lot of similarities. By the way, the person I was thinking of was Trump. He's definitely a narcissist. I mean, you don't put your name in big letters on a building unless you're a huge narcissist. Just saying. All right, next up is schizoid personality disorder. People with this disorder avoid relationships and don't show a lot of emotion. They would classify themselves as loners, but they are beyond loner. They are extreme loners. They genuinely prefer to be alone and don't actually secretly want to be popular. They would actually rather everybody else on the planet were to disappear tomorrow and everybody, just leave me alone. Just go away. Leave me alone. I'm not interested. I think a really good example of schizoid personality disorder is Gollum from Lord of the Rings, or at least that's what people tell me, because I have never seen the movie or read the books And before you go, what? You've never seen it? No. I don't have 40 hours of my life to sit down and watch one movie. So, no, I haven't seen it. But from what I've been told, he is pretty lonerish, wants to be left alone, doesn't want to be around other people. So, there's that. Schizoid personality people tend to seek jobs that require little social contact because they really, really don't like people. Their social skills are often weak because, again, they are not around people and they don't care about people. So just go away and leave them alone. They are often perceived as humorless and distant. Those who are diagnosed with SPD are not able to develop accurate reflections of themselves because of their lonerness. One of the things that's really important for us to be able to be self-reflective about who we are is to be able to look at other people and go, oh, that's what they're doing, and this is what I'm doing. Wow, I'm kind of a jerk here. Probably should change. Schizoid people don't give a damn about that. They will just keep right on going because they lack that self-awareness because of the lack of reflection of what they do and what they think. Okay. Next up is schizotypical or schizotypal, kind of the same thing. Schizotypal personality disorder is a personality disorder that is characterized by a need for social isolation, odd behavior and thinking, and often unconventional beliefs. Think of schizotypical or schizotypal personality disorder as kind of schizophrenia light. It's like you have all of the symptoms of schizophrenia, but not strongly enough to be diagnosed as schizophrenic. You just kind of have little bits and pieces of it. You might be suspicious or paranoid. You might have obsessive ruminations about without inner resistance. Unusual perceptual experiences, including depersonalization or derealization, basically hallucinations and out-of-body experiences. Inappropriate or constricted emotion, behavior that is odd and eccentric. So it's basically, it's like schizophrenia, except, like I said, schizophrenia light. It's got a few less calories than schizophrenia. The next up is avoidant. Avoidant personality is very similar to schizoid personality disorder. They are characterized by being timid, anxious, and fearful of rejection. And so they reject society first. They don't want anything to do with society. They would prefer to be alone because they're afraid that if they were to say, hey, do you want to come over to my house? We'll watch a movie, that the answer will be, no, get away from me, you disgusting creep. They consider themselves to be socially inept and personally unappealing. And so they avoid social interaction for fear of being ridiculed or humiliated. So they want to have a relationship with others, but they simply don't. Okay. So schizoid, they don't have a relationship with others and don't want it. Avoidant, they don't have a relationship with others, but crave it. And they want it so badly, but nobody likes me. And I'm just kind of creepy and weird. So I'm just going to go over here and be creepy and weird over here. All right. Last, but certainly not least, dependent personality disorder. People with dependent personality disorder are unable to make decisions on their own or do things independently. They rely on their parents, a spouse, friends, or just other people in general to make major choices in their lives. And they're usually very unhappy being alone. Their underlying fear seems to be that they will be rejected or abandoned by the important people in their lives. I know I've said don't diagnose people and don't self-diagnose yourself, but I am really sure that an ex of mine has dependent personality disorder. Maybe it's cleared up by now, but oh my God, going out to dinner with her was an absolute nightmare because not only would it take her half an hour to pick something off of the menu to eat, But then when she got the food, she would eat like 2 or 3 bites and go, I didn't really want this. Why did you pick it? I don't know. I felt pressure that I needed to pick something. Well, you did need to pick something because I was getting extremely hungry. I thought you said you wanted this. Yeah, I thought I did. I don't want this. They were just, she was always that way. She could not make a decision. And it was enough to drive a person crazy. And if it's me that we're talking about, you know how close to crazy I am normally. Anyway, the fact is that, yeah, dependent personalities, they just have to have somebody make the decisions for them. And then they're usually unhappy with the decisions that you make, but they won't say anything because they don't want you to leave, because you're the person that's going to make all the decisions for them. So it's kind of a cycle, and it's really annoying. One of the things that I will not forget to mention to you all, and this was something that I saw in, oddly enough, a TikTok video, because there's actually a lot of really good creators on there, specifically centered around psychology and neurodivergency and all this other kind of stuff. Anyway, there was a person that asked this creator a question, and this creator is a psychiatrist. She's been through school and talks about psychological issues and things like that. And one of the questions that she got was centered around the why is it that people who get diagnosed as mentally ill or having a mental disability or disorder of some kind tend to get like 4 things that all kind of get lumped together? It's kind of like a buy one, get 3 free. And she's like, well, there's a reason for that. Typically, if you go undiagnosed for a I don't want to say a prolonged period of time, but for any amount of time, people don't understand why you do things the way that you do them. So say, for example, you suffer from ADHD and you've never been diagnosed as that. ADHD is characterized by not really being able to focus on any one thing. And your brain kind of moves really fast from one thing to another. And it's kind of like, you're not able to sit down and focus for hours at a time. But a person who is, has ADHD and doesn't get diagnosed with that will have people look at them and go, well, why can't you just sit down and pay attention? I don't know. It's just not something I can physically do. Well, there's something wrong with you. And that will become internalized inside of them, and they will feel bad about that, which will spark depression. And that depression is, I can't do that. I am broken. There is something wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. And that develops depression, and that depression might also develop anxiety. And so a lot of things kind of come together because of the fact that people get basically judged because of how they operate as an individual that isn't the exact same as everybody else. That could be, not good. So that's ultimately why people are like, oh, I just got diagnosed with a major depression, anxiety disorder, and ADHD. Wow. How did that happen? You internalized it, and then it's a whole thing, but you get the idea. All right. Now I'm going to go check to see if there are any questions. Oh. But there's not a single one. Just kidding. I bet there's a ton. Okay. Yeah, Alexa, I don't know why you're alive. All right. Oh, you're going to interview with Forbes to be a tutor? Interesting.
Mac, we can't hear you from afar.
That's okay. I'm not addressing anything.
I'm not even.
Good Lord. Oh, good God. Gross. Wow. Okay. So now that I've scrolled to a point where there's actually a question, how do you get over depression? Well, there's a couple of different ways. Go and see a therapist. It really does help. People who go and see a therapist generally give good, I don't want to say reviews, but generally give good marks to the therapy actually helping. So I recommend therapy. And they might be able to send you to a psychiatrist and maybe get diagnosed with something a little bit more serious, maybe get some medications, things like that. But go to a therapist. If you think you need some help, get help. Seriously. Oops. Scrolled too far. Uh-huh. Okay, working at the park. Good. Wow. All right. So that was basically all of the questions. So now that that's over with, let's go ahead and stop that recording.